currently I illustrate stuff too and broadcast as well. And tonight was originally going to be Shelley Paulo. I had to find a really worthwhile replacement for her, and I think I got him a pretty good one. This is Jim E. Noble. Jim E. Noble is a comic book writer extraordinaire, and he decided he had brave enough to come onto my show. So Jim, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so happy you made that post today. I was like, yeah, let's go live.
I'm gonna let you know this, dude. Like some of my best conversations have literally been like this. Like Chuck, the first one I did with Chuck Pinot, it's like I had something similar happen. A guest just couldn't make it, and it was like, well, I need someone to come. Chuck's like, I'll go. I had no plan. So it's like, and we just had a blast. We ended up talking about Canadian cities and metal. That's what ended up happening. That's what we did. Like we ended up that's what we literally ended up doing. It was amazing. And so I always go into these kind of an open mind because as you can tell, there was a ton of prep for this, as you could definitely recall.
Oh yeah, and Chuck's an awesome guy too. I met Chuck about 1.5 years ago at a con. Super cool dude.
No, he's awesome. No, he's an amazing dude. So Chuck Pinot, happy if you're listening to this. How you doing, brother? No, it's interesting. I have a definitely big love of comics, and I can tell you do too because of what you're doing. So for you. What was it for you? What was it? Was it a particular superhero? Was it a particular story? How did you jump into this?
So like, how did I jump into being a comic book guy or a comic book writer?
Well, I think one leads to the other. So I think comic book guy first, then comic book writer.
So when I was like 5, my dad gave me all of his comic books from when he was a kid, and a lot of it was like Batman stuff, and some of it was like some Marvel. Iron Man, and Chris Claremont's run of the Uncanny X-Men from the late 70s into the early 80s. And so one day I had a conversation with my dad. We were watching X-Men 2, X-Men United, and my dad goes, man, I really hate the X-Men. And I was like, that's going to be my favorite comic book from here on out.
Oh, man. See, X-Men to me is such a hard one because it's the book I really want to like almost all the time. And no, actually my reason was always it was intimidating to go to the comic shop and figure out what to get into for X-Men because it was like, yeah, I don't know where to start. And it took me, I think, decades to figure this out because don't get me wrong, the X-Men as a concept is one of the coolest in all of comics. Like it's about a family of misfits essentially trying to find their place in the world. That's an awesome story. You can tell that at any point in history, and there's always going to be something that actually resonates. That's why X-Men is such a really fun property. But from the outside looking in, when you're a comic guy looking just to get into collecting, and you see X Factor, you see Wolverine, you see X-Men, you see Uncanny X-Men, you see Extreme X-Men, you see all these books, and you're like, what the hell do I do? Right? Because I don't know. Right? That was always my thing with the X-Men. So I got in, like me personally with them, I got into them when it was a very uncool time to be an X-Men, which was during the movie era, because the movie era was it was tough because Marvel didn't want to promote its own movie. It was a really weird thing, so nothing really creative. But there were some good books in that time. I was always a big fan of Peter David's X Factor, and I really loved X-Men Red is one of my favorite books. I think of the last 10 years, Tom Taylor did a really fun job reimagining Jean Grey as Professor X. Kind of, they had a really cool Professor X Magneto dynamic there that was really fun. I wish that book had gone longer, but so yeah, just completely geeking out about the X-Men just for a second. That was always my thing. So how did basically, but because you got all the Claremont stuff, you got to jump in pretty much at a really good time.
Oh yeah. I started with that, and then as I got older, once I got a job and was able to afford comic books, like that's when I really started getting the comics. Like, so that was like right around the time when World War Hulk came out.
Okay, that's a fun Hulk story.
So when that was coming out, I was like, wow, this is really cool. But I didn't know anything about Planet Hulk. I didn't know anything about the Marvel Civil War. So I had to go back and reread all that stuff that had just come out, like probably, I think it was like a year or 2 years apart from each other. And then like also at this time, like around 2007, 2008 is when the Marvel movie started.
Yeah.
And then Marvel got like really big. And like, that's like right when I really got into the Marvel comic books, because I could like go to the movies and then show my friends all the comics that I had. I was like, yeah, man. So like this happens and this happens.
No, it's cool. Like I think Marvel, especially, has done a really good job of taking some of their best stories and putting them onto the big screen. And I think it's a really, really kudos to them that they actually, the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe up to Avengers Endgame. That's a feat. Like, honest to God,
Yeah.
that feat is incredible. I will never do that twice, but I will. I'm not like for me, it was just like okay, just the sheer manipulation of people, getting people in the right places to do their parts. That part of it just is that was an incredible feat. But while I don't know what movie theaters are going to look like in 2 years, I think we're all kind of up in the air. I think the drive-in theaters have a real shot right now, personally.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those situations where I looked at it and I just said to myself, well, I don't know if I want to go back and put that much money into one particular franchise. Don't get me wrong, I still will see some Marvel movies.
Right.
I might not see the Avengers. Like I might just say, you know what, I'm out. Right, I'm not going to care about that so much. I'm just going to worry about those franchises I really, really like, and nothing else. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, like, because like for me, like I was an X-Men guy, so when like Avengers was coming out, I was like, the Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, like it's not Wolverine, it's not Magneto, it's not Cyclops. But then like a lot of those movies though that the X-Men were coming out with at the time the Avengers was coming out, I was like, oh, the Avengers is way better movie.
Oh yeah, no. The X-Men. Okay, First Class was really good. I really enjoyed First Class.
Yeah, I like First Class a lot.
Yeah, and Age of Apocalypse is fantastic. Like I think I thought it was a good, because those early X-Men movies, especially the Marvel Universe, whether they realize it or not, a big thank you for those. And I was really cool that they actually tied that up in a really nice way. It was a cool thank you to anybody that watched those original X-Men movies. You got a nice little payoff with how everybody ended up. And that was cool. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was really nicely well done. After that, not so much.
The Dark Phoenix movie, I saw that like once, and I don't remember anything of it other than it was like really bad.
So, seeing as I'm a Green Lantern fan, I saw the Green Lantern movie in the back of my head. I can't unsee it.
Yeah,
I want to, but I can't. Right, so that's where I'm at. Right, I'm a DC guy ultimately, but there are some Marvel properties I really, really, really dig, and like Modern X-Men. So Modern X-Men, the two books I really loved, and unfortunately COVID kind of wrecked my master plan with some of those books. I really was enjoying them. Was Excalibur and Marauders. I love Kitty Pryde as a pirate. It's just freaking cool. And Excalibur might be the most fun like X book I've ever read. I really, really dug how they did reimagine Captain Britain. Fantastic. Like I said, I am a comic fan. I really do like the X-Men, but it took me a long time to find my way to actually get into that franchise, because I don't want to buy them all. Like that's the thing. They're not all for me, and I will never touch Wolverine. It's just because he's everywhere. He's basically, I hate to say it, he's kind of like a whore. He goes everywhere and anywhere. And he's kind of like one of those things where you just look at it and go, I just don't want to touch that. It's just one of those things where you just look at it, go, he's a fun character, but he gets around a little too much. I will never get a full, complete story with him. And
he stands the test of time too, because they did the storyline Old Man Logan, so it's like he's never gonna die. Like they can't, even with the death of Wolverine, it was like they were placing bets on how long it's gonna be before he returns, and it was like a year and a half, 2 years.
And that's literally what it was, like 1 year, 2 years. I think the best death was Captain America. I mean, you knew that wasn't gonna last forever, but Bucky as Cap, like that was cool. Like that was a really, really amazing run. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a really good run. I mean, but the whole Bucky coming back and as the Winter Soldier was like so amazing. It was like, what?
It's still the best Marvel movie. Like it's still in
Yeah,
my opinion. Like when like you can argue Black Panther's really close. The first Guardians is really good. Thor
oh yeah.
Ragnarok fun, but Captain America Winter Soldier is by itself. It's just a complete package. So
See, when I saw the trailer for Ragnarok, um, I was really disappointed because they were playing the Zeppelin soundtrack to it, and I was like, oh, so it's basically Guardians of the Galaxy, but with Thor. They're going to be using the old rock music, and it's more colorful. And then of course now the new Thor that's coming out, like he's going to be with the Guardians, so it's like, okay.
but I actually, so Thor is unique in the sense that like he can go, you can put him anywhere and he works.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Thor. He's such a, he works on Earth, he works in space. He's got the weight. He's of a weight class unto himself, and so you can put him in and out. I'm actually looking forward to when Jane becomes Thor in the movies. That was my last Thor arc, and I was like, that was probably the best of Aaron's stuff. Honestly, was that arc of Thor, because it was an old school Thor book. It literally was like the original William Blake. I think it was William Blake. I want to say it's William Blake. Please say I got that one right. Comic fans will probably yell at me if I don't.
No, but, Donald Blake. Donald Blake.
Yeah, Donald Blake. Yes. Donald Blake. Yeah. So it very much was a throwback to that. I really thought like it was very meta sense. It was almost Thor at its purest, and I thought that was really, really, really cool stuff. So. So like you can tell, I'm a comic book guy. Like I'm a big time comic book guy. So, but no, I really dug it. I'm really curious how much of that translates into the movie. I'm hoping a lot of it, but we'll see.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it'll be really interesting. It's also interesting to see modern storylines being turned into movies that the storylines aren't even that old, and it's like, okay, that was fast. Like normally, like because I mean, but like granted, being a comic book fan, like if you were a comic book fan in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, like you had to wait, a good amount of time before these Marvel movies started coming out, and like they were like really good Marvel movies compared to like like the Captain America movie that came out in the 90s, and the Hulk TV show. So like, but now like you get like almost like this realistic, but also it's unrealistic movie of the Hulk, and he's like smashing real cars and flying through space and all that now, and it's like, wow. Who would have thought?
Well, no, it's Marvel Studios did a really good job figuring out what worked for the characters, like how they could work on the big screen.
Yeah,
they did a really, really good job about it. So I mean, it's fun. Like I think the thing about all the Marvel movies, it doesn't really matter which ones you like or dislike. They all have they have a sense of fun, and you generally like everybody in the movie. Like that's it's a simple formula, but it works. Yeah. I like you. I want you to succeed. I'm okay if you get your ass kicked a little bit because you are a bit of a douche. If you're in Iron Man's case, I still Iron Man 3. I still crack up. He was trying to boss around like a 12-year-old kid that was building his iron form, and it was like, yeah, it encapsulated like his flaws in such an endearingly fun way.
Yeah,
and but you like those characters, and that's why it works. Like you like that you want them to succeed. You want them to kind of go with the flow, have fun. That's what we did. Like that's the thing. Like a movie experience, and even a great comic experience, I think at heart is fun. Like it's supposed to be fun,
right?
Especially superheroes. Superheroes are okay. Come on. I mean, they're the most absurd thing ever. I mean, it's almost like okay, so you get a guy or a girl that went out of their way to design an elaborate costume so that they can showcase themselves to the world. I mean, let's be honest here, right? And they're fighting villains with the same flair for the dramatic they have. I mean, it's silly, but it can be so fun and rewarding and endearing if it's done incredibly well. I think the thing is I love old DC because old DC still has that sense of fun. Marvel doesn't always do it today, but they still have it. And there's some like Unbeatable Squirrel Girls officially is always going to be awesome for me. Right, because it's the silliest thing ever, but I'm in. Like whatever, you could have done that in perpetuity, and I wouldn't have cared, right? But I think the sense of fun, like there's a sense of wonder and fun in comics that's unique to any other like storytelling form. Because movies are larger in life and they're bigger, and there's sort of like there's that point where the imagination just goes. But there's also, but with comics, you're imagining those moments in between time if you do them really, really well. And I think there has to be a really fun sense of magic to it. Otherwise, they're not fun. And if they're not fun, why are you doing them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've talked about the comics I like probably like to death. I'm sorry, man. Just like I said,
hey, it's all good, man. I love talking comics because I don't get to do it very often with COVID. It's like it's me and these four walls here, and it's like
that would be a great comic in of itself. Like just talking like the walls, different walls, have them be like, because honestly, you know this as well as I do. There are some comic fans that is much like talking to those walls. You're not gonna have it change their minds about certain things, or so you're looking at them and going, I could say something, but I feel like I'm talking to a wall. That actually would be an amazing comic.
When they start talking back is when you gotta like, wait a minute.
That's okay. That could be fun though. That could be fun as a one of. That would be a fun story. The walls are talking, right?
Well, I am doing so in February for International Toast Day, which is the last Thursday of February. I'm doing a story about a killer toaster.
Yeah, that's cool. Sorry, just I hit a button.
It's all good.
I'm just seeing how many people are paying attention. Hey, Mandy E58. They go. The walls have eyes and ears. Yeah, they do sometimes. Hi, Mandy. How you doing? Right. But it's just one of those things where no, like sorry. Anyway, my bad. Go on with Toast Month. I jumped in with the.
Oh no, it's all good, man. Like yeah, like so yeah. Like I come up with like ideas like that, and I'm like, let's turn it into a book. Like I never thought I'd be making comic books about sexy lady clowns and recovering drug addicts who like to have a good time, and topless cave women who travel to the 80s, and bounty hunters from outer space to turn into topless chicks on the beach. And then now I'm doing a killer toaster story. So it's like my limits are like, they're way out there.
So actually, I'll tell you my little like top secret. Well, not top secret. I've talked about this on the show a couple of times. No, he actually does sound incredible. Like his range is ridiculous. So we'll talk. We're going to compare ranges here. So my first comic, my first. I'm actually illustrating. I'm teaching I've been doing drinking draws with some actually awesome people like Mog and Elsa, and they've been great, and I've loved doing them. But it's almost like my training ground because I have this story in my head about a dragon that makes fun of the creator drawing him. Right, and it's a how to draw comic disguised as like a very fourth wall meta thing, and it's basically designed to kick my own ass and get me better, right? Yeah. And also I think there's something to be said about taking yourself seriously. I don't do that very well, so no, I mean, dude, you got topless women going through time, and you got killer toasters on the other end. I mean. You can't.
Yeah, I'm not winning any Writer of the Year awards, but I'm having fun.
Okay, I'll ask this then. So, comedy. That sounds like you're big into that. So
yeah,
where does that come from?
Well, I don't know. Like I'm a very fun type of person. Like I don't know. I guess I may get it from like. My parents, like my mother was actually a comedian in the 80s. Like she used to open up her like Roseanne Barr. Oh yeah. And like in the 90s, she was actually going to be a cast member on SNL during when Jimmy Fallon, Horatio Sands and Chris Parnell, that season where they were featured players, like their first season, there was supposed to be a fourth player, and that fourth player was actually going to be my mom. But because my dad was in the Army and he was always gone a lot, she was like, well, I guess I'll raise my kids. And I was like, well, you should have just gone on to be a cast member. Like, I found this out like 5 years ago. I was like, yeah, you should have just went on SNL. Like,
Well,
like,
I can respect her position on that. Like, honestly,
oh, yeah.
I mean, but it does explain. I kind of want to meet your mom now because I like you have definitely kind of I can tell you have fun, right? And you can see the absurd side to life to some degree. So I can only imagine where you got that from, right? So I'm assuming your mom has her own little unique take of the universe, which should probably be awesome, honestly. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So and I imagine that's where you got that from. So you got kind of got like a built. You must be hard to crack. Like, I mean, if you really like judging jokes, you could probably be a very harsh critic about comedy and timing. I can just see it.
Well, like, so my first book I did, when the Totally Rad Life of Violet #1, when I came out with it, I showed it to like Billy Tucci a week after it came out because I was at a show that he was at, and I gave it to him, and he took it and he actually read it at the show, and I was like really surprised that he like took the time to read my book. Because stuff like that normally doesn't happen. Like whenever you go to cons and you hand someone your book, and like if it's a big artist like Billy Tucci's, like you would think like, oh yeah, I'll look at it, and they never do. But he actually read it, and excuse me, he was like, that's the best opening line in a comic book that I've read in the last 25 years. And he goes, I'm really I'm really mad that I didn't come up with that line. And he goes, you can quote me on that. And I was like, what, really? Like,
Yeah.
Billy Tucci said that about my book, and literally, so because I make adult comic books, and like my first issue, the opening line is, they say, all great stories start with a bang, or in this case, blow, and my character's on her knees, and you can pretty much guess what she's doing on the first page, and so he thought that was so great. He was like,
that is awesome.
Man, I really wish I came up with that. I was like, I just came up with that. Like, that wasn't a thing that sat on the burner for a while. I was just like, that'd be a fun way to start a comic book.
Oh no, it's up there. I mean, you're trying to get people's attention, and that works, man. That's very much okay. So, we can go just a couple different ways here. So we'll go serious, and then we'll get sillier. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
So let's. Okay, so adult comics there's definitely a niche. It's definitely a niche market, and it's far more rewarding than I think a lot of creators realize. I mean, I don't know if I can honestly say superheroes are the bread and butter anymore, considering that we are in the Kickstarter era and
the indie world. Yeah,
like we're in the indie world era. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's still a mainstream market, but much like the publishing industry in books, it's the traditional space is shrinking, and what's happening now is everything's kind of niching out, which I think is really, really, really cool. But the thing about that is that means you got to make conscious decisions about kind of what markets you're targeting. If you decide to go down the adult path, so I'm going to ask this. I'm almost afraid to, but I mean, like, you chose the adult route. So why the interest in the adult route? Like it was like, did you like the comics I'm trying to think of? I can't remember. The magazine's name is right now escaping my head, and it hurts my brain because they do good comics in there, but it's very adult. It's a magazine. I've gone blank. Shit.
Well, I know Penthouse. Penthouse.
No, it was a comic one. It's not Penthouse. Although Playboy has done comics, it's not Playboy either.
Heavy metal.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Yes. Were you a heavy metal guy?
I like heavy metal, but I'm not like some of those like super hardcore fans. Like, I know there's like some real like serious heavy metal guys out there. But basically what happened was, so about going on 6 years ago now, almost 6 years ago, when I was in the Navy for 4 years. I got out of the Navy. I was living with my parents, and I was working at Kohl's department store. I was working in retail, and I got a gig working at CBCS as a comic book grader. They hired me over the phone. I moved down to St. Pete, Florida, where they were. And for 5 years, I was a professional comic book grader. And a lot of the books that I was seeing come in, like, because when you're a comic book grader, like and I was doing all the modern books. So anything after 1975 to now, I had to be up to date on. I had to know everything what's going on inside the book, first appearance, cameos, costume changes, all that fun stuff. I always had to like know. Also, I had to know the page counts and all that. So it's like burned into my brain. Like, like Amazing Spider-Man 300 has 24 pages, 12 to the centerfold, 12 to the end of the book. Anyways, like I can tell you, every day I worked there, I read a New Mutants 98. Well, I didn't read it, but like I graded it. But like every day, there was always a New Mutants 98. Like I saw it so much, I was like, I don't want to own this book anymore. So I sold mine. I was like, because there's so many out there. So, and I was seeing a lot of at the time I was seeing a lot of like Zenscope books, and Zenscope, they were doing like nude covers, but there's stories on the inside. There was like no naked ladies on the inside. There's no nudity on most of their books. I think there may be one or two that they may have nudity in it. Mm-hmm. But like when I was going through it, I'm like, well, this is like false advertising. They're putting naked ladies on the cover, but there's no naked ladies. And I was thinking, well, what if I did a naked lady comic book with naked ladies on the inside? Like, so what you see is what you're going to get, kind of thing. And I was fortunate enough, I started doing that in June of 2019. And unfortunately, because of COVID, but also like a blessing in disguise, I lost my job at CBCS because of the lack of business that they were getting. They said, we're going to unfortunately have to let you go. It was on good terms. I got a special like dealer rate so I can submit books to them and all that stuff. But because of that, that kicked everything I was doing into high gear into getting into adult comic books. And also at that time when I started doing comics, I was really good friends with Dan Mendoza, who does Zombie Tramp, Sad Girl, Psycho Baby, and he's like Kickstarter extraordinaire on right now. And he was like a really big inspiration to me to do comics, because it was like, wow, man, like he's doing a book about a call girl who becomes a zombie, and then just like, she's just a badass and doing all these things, and now he's doing all these other amazing books on Kickstarter. And it's like, well, that's really awesome. Like that's something I wanted to do. And I was fortunate enough to like, my first Kickstarter, on a goal of 1,000, I made 8,000. And people ask, like, they're always like, well, like, why do you do adult comic books? It's like, well, at the end of the day, sex sells. And honestly, because of the whole COVID thing, it really kept me alive. Basically, like I'm able to pay my rent, pay all my bills because of the books I make, and people like them. And I'm like, all right. And like, if I was doing a superhero book, I don't think the returns would be enough for me to keep it going, honestly, to survive. Like basically for the adult comics, for me, it's like it's a lifeline in a way, because it keeps me it keeps the lights on, keeps the internet going.
No, I get you. No, I'm in a unique story. Like I literally got let go from what I was working on over the weekend, but I like in my particular case, it's not something I'm going to miss. It was just one of those, like, it was there. But I mean, it's forced me to go into high gear with some of the other things I'm doing, which is I'm totally like, including this show, which I'm totally cool with. So I mean, it's one of those situations where you just recognize. But you made a very conscious decision to actually go into a niche, which I think is actually really smart. I'm not sure if you would have done well or not with superheroes, but it was definitely a harder nut to crack because everybody does superheroes, right? And that's the thing, right? It's funny. I like novels. I want to do superhero stuff, right? Novels, but in terms of comics, I want to do science fiction. I want to do like other things. You know what I mean? It feels to me like if you really want to stand out in comics right now, indie or traditional, like you got to tell a story only you can tell. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like there's like this, a lot of the stories I write, I write it because one, like I think it's a really cool story, but also two, it's like story's never been done. Like some of the stories I do, like no one's ever done a straight up like clown pornography book. Like clown porn is just like, it's an untapped market for comic books. So you got Harley Quinn. You got Harley Quinn, right? But Harley Quinn she's not really a clown. Two, you'll never get to see her naked. And it's like, but there's a market for it. There's a market for sexy clown ladies. And I'm surprised there's not a lot of sexy clown comics. It really blows my mind. Like why isn't there more sexy clown comic books?
You stumble into your own gold mine there, my friend. Like no, but that's so I go into this with freelancing, right? Because freelancing are like that's what you're doing essentially. Is you got your own enterprise. You decided that you would go down this path. You're like you're a particular flavor of ice cream, right? You're not for everybody,
Right.
but you don't care. You've made a decision that okay, I might be the tiger stripe. And you know what? Like not everybody likes tiger stripe ice cream. Not everybody does. But people that like it really do, and they'll support you.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's great business. I'm actually like that's a compliment. It's kind of like you made a decision early on, and it works for you, and it's something you enjoy. I can tell you've enjoyed going down this path. I mean, it's much like so I interview people and I discover things all the time about people.
Yeah.
I imagine same thing with you. Like you're doing this stuff, you find like if you do meet your fandom, it's always interesting to find like who's really into this stuff. It's fascinating. Like I almost feel like I'm not gonna say like fetish is the norm, but it's amazing that everybody is like into so many different things, and you just learn not to judge. Does that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely too. And like also like I learned really quickly too, like when you're doing adult comic books and you're doing Kickstarters, it's like, well, in order to pledge to a Kickstarter, you have to be of a certain age and you have to have a credit card. Normally people who have credit cards are adults.
Normal.
So how many kids are looking at comics on Kickstarter? I guarantee you it's less kids and more adults. So it's like
no. Like I said, I applaud you, man. Like you have a very, very shrewd, like honestly, like it's shrewd business. I'm not like even if regardless of anything else, you're having fun. If you didn't have fun, you wouldn't be doing this. And honestly, you wouldn't be doing it as well as you are because that's another big part of it. There's a certain authenticity to it that everybody has to kind of bring to their own stuff. And I feel like for you, this is it, and that's cool. You're gonna be the next Chip Zdarsky, I guess, right? Yeah, I hope I said his name right.
There's a couple guys that have been like, they told me they're like, you're like Larry Flint of comic books, and I was like, well, I hope I don't end up in a wheelchair, because he got shot, and I'm like, I don't want to get shot.
Flint was sleazy. No, I'm just being like even as a businessman, he was very he was very, very shady, and you don't want. Here's the thing. I think like adult books, right? No matter what niche, I know like a lot of romance authors. I've interviewed some of them, right? It takes a lot of talent to do a really good adult book. It takes a lot of talent to do a really good adult story, right? That appeals to just adults in a way that is one, tasteful, two, fun. I mean, it can be fun too. I mean, why not? But I mean, oddly respectful, if that makes sense. If you know where I'm coming from there.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, no one. I mean, there's a fantasy element to it, absolutely. By the same token, there's also it's got to be good. Otherwise, no one's going to buy it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And what's funny too is like I actually did do I call it an all ages book, but it's more like a PG-13 book where like I could go to a convention and I don't have to worry about covering up any covers for this book.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that and I sold it to a couple of the fans who bought my previous books, they're like, hey man, there's like no nudity at all in this book, like at all. And I was like, oh yeah, man, like that's my all ages book. But they really liked it. I was like, they were like, because the thing was I use the same artists that I use on my adult books, so they're like, oh wow, so you guys don't just do the adult stories. It's like, no, like we could do like space science fiction, like there's tentacles, but like there's like no, none of the weird tentacle stuff in it, but it's like it's fun.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's totally fine. So who's your artist, if you don't mind my asking?
I have a few. The main one I use a lot is Alfred Lee, who's in Mexico. He's done about, of the 12 books that I've done, he's done about 11 of them. He's done The Totally Rad Life of Violet. He's done all the Roxy. Actually, no, he did one of the Roxy stories. and then all of our Neon, The Next Victim, our 80s slasher story, our Cave Woman story, our Star Wars parody story. And there's two other artists I use. One's from Brazil, the other one I believe is also from Mexico. Marcelo Salazar, Rafael Angeles, and actually I just hired two new artists. One is an American named Bobby Elias Slater, super cool guy, but he uses a pen name, so I can't even say what his real name is. But yeah, I mean, I tend to use a lot of the same artists just because just the way we work together, like they understand my scripts and they're like, wow, this is like really fun. I'm like, yeah, man, like,
well, yeah.
And they usually bring a lot to the table too, because they'll be like, like, well, you did it on this panel. Like, what if instead of this, we added this or turned this into a double page? And it's like, yeah, that's even better than what I originally had planned. Like, one of the issues I did, it was like kind of like a Quentin Tarantino thing where I was like, well, what if we did page 3 as page 1 and then page 2 as page 3? And he's like, well, what if we did page 2 as page 1 and page 3 as page 2? And I was like, that's even better.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, one of the things about comics in general is it's a collaborative process. No matter who's involved, what's involved, there's definitely like a collaborative process between you and everybody else. And when you have someone you click with, you're not so quick to go like, no, where are you going? Please come back. Yeah. I'll give you money. Please come back. Because one, it's honestly one of the most difficult things in the comic industry is finding reliable people to do your work.
Yes, it is.
It is so hard, right? Because this is the thing, right? This is why price point's a huge part of the freelance industry as well, and this is why you pay for who you pay for, because you realize very quickly that people that are worth their weight in gold are people that show up, get the job done, are reliable, understand where you're coming from, and are professional. And that's an incredibly rare thing. So when you find them, you're like, oh God, Jim, you there? I think Jim froze, ladies and gentlemen. I think he froze. So we're going to take a little minute here and just talk real quick about some other things until he hopefully comes back. Yeah, we're going to take a quick second here while he reboots here and just talk about some things real quick. And that is, first and foremost, yeah, I got some drawings I'm working on right now. For my grandmother right now, I'm working on literally a Pookie teddy bear, which is like, Garfield, very Garfield-esque. And I'm working on more Lego Paladins. One for my sister, one in general. I think he's coming back. You're back! Hey!
I don't know what happened. I swear.
The internet's evil. It's okay. Just blame our Google overlays. Just when in doubt, blame Google. Where did you hear before you disappeared?
I don't know. My whole mind was just like shit. I forgot what we were talking about.
Okay, so we're talking about. So I was saying about what we were saying there was about you finding good people and keeping them.
Yeah, yes, you find the gold people, and then that's probably right when it cut out.
Yeah,
like the people worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, so when you find people that show up, are professional, are willing to work with you, make your work better, which is another thing I did not mention before you disappeared, was you find people that are that good, you do everything in your power to keep them, and you value them accordingly, because if you don't, someone else will. Right.
Yeah, 100%. Like so Alfred, my main artist, when I first met him, I was paying for commissions. Like he would do like sketch covers for me and stuff, and I was paying pretty good money for these sketch covers. And at one point, he did a sketch cover for me that was like a pretty adult sketch cover, and some of his fans hit me up and they're like, "Hey man, like, can I see it uncensored?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." And then I thought about it, I'm like, man, I should be charging people to see this uncensored. And then I was like, wait a minute, because he had submitted to Marvel and DC some pages to see if he could get on to be a Marvel DC artist. And unfortunately, they turned him down for whatever reason. I was like, so I hit him up. I was like, hey, man, if I wrote a story, would you do the artwork? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. And I was like, okay, great. And then like that's basically how it all started. Like, and since then, we've created like a whole empire of comic books. And it's like, it's so amazing just to think like, a couple of years ago, I was paying, for sketch covers, and like now it's like literally we're creating these amazing characters that like other artists like they do variant covers for, and like retailers want exclusives with, and it's like I never would have thought we would be where we're at. We're not even at the 2 year point. We're still at about a year and a half in.
So okay, so I guess we're gonna talk about ambition before we get silly, I guess. So what's your goal?
Well, my goal right now, I want to move to Arizona where my printer is located, and that way I'm neighbors with my printer. Because the amount of money that I spend in shipping costs, like the weight of all the books, because I print up a lot of books, it's actually cheaper for me to just be like, hey, neighbor, like there was some stuff in my car, and then I could ship it out. And, I'm saving, that extra $600, $800. That's a whole other totally rad comic book I could be making right now.
Mm-hmm.
So my short-term goal is to move to Arizona and then work from there and, build it bigger and bigger. My 10-year goal is to like, I want it to be, I don't want to be like, Brian Pulido is a good example of like how to do your Kickstarters, but like I know it's like he's been in the business for almost 30 years. So like to say I want to be like Brian Pulido, to try to do that, like when you first start, it's unrealistic. But in 10 years, it's like, what's to stop me from having a Kickstarter that's maybe not the same numbers of Brian Pulido, but are big in scale considering where I started from,
Well, so two thoughts. Why not shoot for bigger? Look, I mean, I'm gonna throw this at you like this. It's cool to have heroes. I've had my share of heroes in this industry. It's cool to see their successes. It's cool to know that what is possible. But I mean, I'm not looking at trying to match them. I'm looking at trying to surpass them. And I mean that in the most respectful way.
Oh yeah.
Right? In the most respectful ways. The industry is better and healthier if more people are doing well at it, and not just the people that have always done well at it. Brian Pulido is an incredible creative, but he would probably tell you the same thing I'm about to tell you. He would love to see other people succeeding because it does better business for him as well. Because for each person that succeeds, that's a new discovery. It's like, hey, like Jimmy Noble's doing fantastic. You know who else? I discovered Brian Pulido. And that's the thing. Like it's amazing how everything leads everywhere, right? So, now I'm going the opposite way. I want to do the young adult, kid, silly stuff, which I'm totally good with. That's my wheelhouse, right? Both of us are avoiding superheroes, ironically enough.
Because we look, you and I, we're into comics. Like we've seen the writings on the wall. It's like we were better off.
It's been there for decades, literally.
Yeah.
Like with all due respect to Marvel and DC, because I think Marvel and DC as a companies are amazing, right? They know where their bread's buttered, and they kind of got the market cornered, and they need to diversify more. I think they were honest. If they were honest with you, they'd tell you the same thing. But they're kind of in this weird trap of, well, this is our bread and butter.
Yep.
Right. We're talking about, like I mentioned earlier, like Wolverine was kind of like, I mean, DC's got an equivalent, and that's Batman. You can put Batman anywhere, and he's there, and you're like, ugh. Right. Right.
If you do 4 Batman issues a month, people will buy it.
No, that's it. No, it's true. It's the same with Wolverine, right? It's the same with Wolverine. So you're kind of really, really, really awkward thing. From a health standpoint, there's 2 points of health. People will buy this Batman book now, and they will always buy this Batman book now. But for every Batman book we make, that's one other book we're not getting. So, especially with right now everything contracted in 2020. Now I think we slowly come out of our shells a little bit in 2021. I think it's not just optimism. I think reality. I think kind of by the time the summer rolls around, I think we're all going to be like, you know what, we're done this, whatever this is, we're done. We're coming out to play. So, yeah. But the thing about that is, right? So you still have to deal with the fact that Marvel, DC do excellent superhero books. and they're kind of caught in that, and they're caught in that because that's what they've made their business doing. So there's a lot of other books they can't do. Now they do try other things, especially DC, but
Right.
essentially they are the superhero niche. So if I'm going to do a superhero book, I got to compete with them. That's how you got to look at it, right? Now it can be done. I mean, Invincible's a great book. It can be done, but it better be damn good, right?
Yeah. And like, what's really interesting too, like, because you mentioned, like how DC, like they're trying to do more things, different from superheroes. What I'm most interested in this year from Marvel, I want to see, because I'm a huge science fiction fan, huge horror fan. So they have the Alien franchise. They have all the 20th Century Fox franchises, right? They're doing an Alien book. I want to see how hardcore are they gonna go. How bloody is it gonna get compared to the Dark Horse stuff that Dark Horse was putting out? Like, are we gonna see chest bursters bursting out of people's chests? Is Marvel gonna censor that? I don't know, because they haven't really done a like real like hardcore book like that in however long,
They can do it. I mean, they do have Conan, and Conan does have their fair share. But but I think what you do if you're Marvel, when you have all these things, is you create another imprint, like much like DC does with did with Vertigo. I don't know if Vertigo exists anymore. I think it's like Black Label now, but
it went to Black Label.
Yeah, everything goes to the Black Label now. So you got DC proper and Black Label, which is, I guess, is a name. I just think they just should have stuck it. It's stuck with Vertigo myself, but that's me. I mean, I wouldn't throw.
I mean, a lot of the good stuff all came out through Vertigo, like Preacher and 100 Bullets.
Babel's really good. Sandman's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of Hellblazers really comes from that line too. I mean, Vertigo had tenure of putting out some amazing books. Now it was more, I guess, horror based, but I mean, there was some science fiction stuff in there too. I mean, I know Warren Ellis's name isn't exactly a popular one right now in comics due to his own things, but let's be honest, I really enjoyed Transmetropolitan, and it was in that label too.
Yeah.
The only other label that did anything really bold was Wildstorm, and unfortunately for Wildstorm, the editorial there, they wanted to create hits. I don't think DC let them, but that's. I'm not gonna get into that too much because I that makes me sad.
Somewhere in an office building, Jim Lee's like, somebody said Wildstorm.
Yeah, I know. Some said that dreaded W, but now it's all Black Label. I don't know. I just think I would have done it all Vertigo, just because Vertigo has tenure as a name. Like you don't have to you almost have to rebuild Black. You almost have to make a brand new brand from the ground up, which is very. Yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
They started out doing the right thing by showing Batman's wiener in the first Black Label book they did, but it was like, well, where do you go from here? And isn't it amazing that like people went crazy to get that issue because of that? Like, who would have thought people would really want a book where you get to see the outline of Batman's wiener? It was crazy.
Someone wanted that. I mean.
Ironically enough, so there is more 9.9s and 10s of that Batman Black Label book, the first issue. There's more 9.9s and 10s than there are 9.8s. So if you have a 9.8, it's not like there's less of those actually than there are of the 9.9s and 10s, which is really crazy when you think about it. It's like, how like usually like a 9.8 is worth a specific amount of money, but when you get to the 9.9s and 10s, the value goes up amazingly. But when you have the market that's oversaturated with 9.9s and 10s of that one book, it's like, well, how do you determine the value of the 9.9s and 10s? Because there's so many.
The 9 is actually worth more because it's actually rare. Well, he disappeared again. We'll wait for a second for him to show up again, because I'm sure he'll be back going, what the heck's going on? I'm just going to blame my Google overlords. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to blame the Google overlords for this because me and Jim are having a really fun conversation here. And honestly, guys, one of the best lessons you can learn from Jim is really that he's created an amazing niche for himself. And even in this time, how you doing again, buddy?
I don't know.
Before you disappear, let me finish talking you up, and then we can continue our conversation, which is this: if the biggest lesson you can learn from a guy like Jim is this: there's lots of underserved niches out there, and if you're bold enough to find them, you can be very much rewarded for them. I mean, that is Jim's success in a nutshell, right? Serving yeah. So that's great business. That's a great business lesson for everybody there. But going back to what I was saying, what we were saying, it's like the 9.8 being the rare one is hilarious. So for me, the closest I get to an adult, quote unquote, adult book, Saga. Like, I mean, that book can get like graphic in some places.
Oh,
right? Yeah. All right. Downright graphic and real and grim and dirty. And it's like, it doesn't hold anything back. And it's all brightly colored too. That's the one thing is like, it's ironically happy and gleeful. And it's like, everything's there. And I mean, everything's there. From like the first page of the book all the way to where it currently is at. That's the book I secretly hope comes back this year is Saga, because I think
they've been on a hiatus for like 3 years now, 4 years almost.
I think they would have come back last year had the apocalypse not happened. I get the feeling that they were ready. The universe just said not just yet. Like that's what the universe is like. Wait another year. Okay.
Instead, Image was like, "Well, we're just gonna color all the Walking Deads now. Here you go." And it's like, all right, thanks.
Actually, so Image. Let's see. What am I grading from there? I'm trying a couple books out. Crossover by
yeah.
I never actually read a Donny Cates book up until that point. Like I just missed him. Like one of those guys you just there are books.
He's hit or miss.
Yeah, no, he's a good dude. I mean, he's a good dude, and I'm friends with his wife. So it's just like it's one of those things where it's just like I knew I was going to try something because at some point they were going to do a book together, and I was going to get that book because she's doing the book. But the thing about that was it was like, wow, right? It was there, it was done, and that's pretty good. They're doing like a haunted rock band, like a rock band horror like comic right now. Oh man, again, names are just escaping me right now. It's really like there's that. And I'm enjoying right now. Boom has a lot of cool books right now. I actually really enjoy what Boom Studios is doing, and I like what the heck is the other one now? Stephanie Phillips is probably my favorite writer from the last year. From what I'm just the different stuff she's done. She's a thriller writer disguised as a comic book writer, and I dig it. So, there's been some good books in the last year. It's just been, I find now the interesting thing is now if I want to read a really really interesting hot book, I now look at Indiegogo and Kickstarter and go, which one looks like it's going to be really good, and you just try different things.
Yeah.
So what do you read? So what are you reading right now?
Well, right now, because of the whole diamond thing that happened last year, I was like, I used to do DCBS. I just used to get books through the mail because it was cheaper. So I was reading the current Venom storyline that they were doing. I read Zombie Tramp for the longest time, and then Damn Mendoza left, and I was kind of like, meh, I'm kind of out. But like because I've been doing so much of my own writing, like I've been reading a lot of like Kickstarter books, like Karen Nicole's Fire Bitch. I really enjoyed Matt Knowles' book that he just came out with a trade for. I picked that up. And then let's see what else. Yeah, it's just a lot of indie books, a lot of Kickstarter stuff, just because like when Diamond shut down, I was like, well, what am I gonna read? And I was like, oh look, Kickstarter's got a lot of comics on there right now.
So for me right now, like I said, I just got Peerless from Memorial. I'm going to be getting that. Anna Skander, next month I'm going to be picking that up. And a guy by Rich Perota is doing a book called Incontessi, which I've already seen the interiors of it. It's a sweet looking book. I can't wait to actually read it. So I think Diamond going through that shutdown was actually probably the most beneficial. Ironically enough, the most beneficial thing to comics in the long term, I think.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. Like if that didn't happen, if COVID didn't happen, I probably wouldn't. I probably well, one, I'd still have my job, my day job. But I probably wouldn't be doing as many Twitter comic books as I'd be doing right now because of COVID.
No, I mean, like I looked at COVID as an opportunity. Now I try to do freelance writing and this is definitely has evolved into like the next level for me, right? I'm curious to see what'll happen in the next, because for me it was finding my niche, figuring out what my niche was, not realizing I was already doing it. Kind of one of those like punch in the face kind of moments there, but so I'm giving this a real shot and seeing where this goes from here. Hey Jag, yes I did, and he's awesome. But the thing about it, I think comics are much like I think comics, especially with the way Kickstarter and like just crowdfunding in general has gone. I think one of the biggest choke points for comics for the last 20 years has been Diamond, because Diamond being the sole distributor, I think really choked out the possibilities. But because of COVID, well, now people aren't just looking at comic shops anymore. And the comic shops for the first time, I think in a long time, now is now being forced to look at indie books a lot more seriously. Now, some comic shops did that prior, but now it's like, well, here's the thing: DC's trying something kind of wonky. Marvel Diamond is like, do you really want to deal with them the rest of your life? Like, hell no. So now it's like it's opened the door for not only different comic stories to be told, but also different forms of distribution. And I think it's real. I think honestly, it would not shock me. I think price point for physical stuff is going to be an issue down the road, but even so, it wouldn't shock me for the next 5 years or so that comics become a bigger deal again, like just across the board.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting, when Diamond was like, yeah, we're not putting out any books. Because I remember specifically, I reached out to the printer that I was using because they're a home operation, and I was like, hey, so if COVID, are you guys still able to make comic books? And they're like, yeah. I was like, great. So I got an idea of like doing a bunch of books and then selling them to retailers, like selling to shops that are only open like curbside pickup. And like I joined, there was like a Facebook group that I joined that was like a bunch of retailer shops and like publishers. And I was like, yeah, like my printer's up and running. I can have books out to you, by Wednesday when new comic book day hits, and like you have a new comic book to sell to people, as opposed to Marvel and DC and all the Diamond stuff just not going out.
Well, yeah, it opened the door, and I don't think it will ever close again, because now it's like and also this is an opportunity. Like, that's kind of why I want to do comics this year, because I'm looking at the fact that market, I think, is about to blow wide open. And I think I wish like books have traditional publishing still has a bigger hold on the book industry than I think Diamond does on the comic industry at this point. And it's interesting, but what's happening, I think, in art in general is it used to be like you have these big houses where people would go to get their works published. Well, now it's almost like it's completely diversified again now. So there's millions of different things. Now the challenge is, how do you stand out?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, Mr. Jim, I got plenty more we can talk about here, but I think I'm going to start with this. for those people trying to get into your work. Now, obviously, you need to be somewhat, well, mature might be a strong word, but you gotta, right? Mature might be a strong word. We'll say able to be mature enough to handle adult content. Assuming you're okay with adult content,
Yeah.
What book would you recommend people to start with you?
Like book that I've made?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have a very wide range of books. Like, again, the adult comics, it's a niche market, but also like the themes I have are also very niche. So like if you really like Star Wars, I have a Star Wars parody story featuring my characters. If you like clowns, I have a clown comic book. If you like so my most serious book is my main book, The Totally Rad Life of Violet, and it's actually about a recovering drug addict who loves to have a good time. She's a sex addict, but she's no longer on drugs, and she cleans up the streets. Like she takes down drug dealers, like shoots them up, like kills them all, like blood, murder, all that stuff. But in the '80s, so if you really like the '80s and like '80s references, and you like badass chicks who take down drug dealers, but also they have sex later on in the book, Totally Rad Life of Violet's usually a great place to start. I have 4 issues of that. Um, but also, like, if you're not into the hardcore sex and all that stuff, I also have my Strange Cosmic Tales, the science fiction story that I did, which is actually in black and white. And the reason why it's in black and white because I wanted to do it like a kind of like a Bollywood homage, because he has so many amazing fantasy covers back in the day, and that's like really like my love note to. Um, but then also, but yeah, I got if you like cave woman, cave women, I got one that goes from a prehistoric jungle to a concrete jungle, the neon lights of the '80s and all that kind of stuff.
Your mic just conked out there.
Uh-oh. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you. I hear you a little bit there.
Hold on. Let me try.
1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Technical difficulties.
Let me try this. I'll be 1 second. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Google overlords, ladies and gentlemen. Google overlords. But we're getting all right. Hold on a sec. Aha.
Okay. How about now?
I hear ya. I hear
Is it
you.
better now?
I hear you now. Jag is laughing. So Google. I think when I hashtag this though, I am going to put Google overlords as a hashtag just because of all the little ins and outs of the technical difficulties of this. But despite that, I still think we've had a pretty fun conversation here. I think so. So you're talking about your science fiction. So your science fiction series. Just repeat that for people, and then we'll just keep going down the line here.
So my science fiction series, like it's black and white. It's like a Bollywood homage story, like kind of like my love note to Bollywood, from like 50s and 60s stuff that he would do. Then I got my cave woman. She goes from a prehistoric jungle to a concrete jungle. She goes from the 1 billion BC to the 1980s, and she doesn't speak modern English, so like everything, all the dialogue for her is all like in her head, basically. Like she doesn't understand anything that these guys are saying to her, and any of this as the story goes along. She's just like, I don't understand. Like she goes into a strip club, money's being thrown at her. She's like, why are people throwing leaves at me? I don't understand this. She wins the amateur night at the strip club. And then yeah, and also like, so one thing I really like to do with all my comic books, I like to, it's kind of like the Marvel thing where you want all your universes to connect in some way. Like there's a reference to some and a cameo of a character in another. So like in the Totally Rad universe, Roxy Feelgood, my sexy clown book, is actually a movie in the Totally Rad universe. So there's in Violet #2, she's going to go see a movie, and there's a poster that says "Coming soon, Roxy Feelgood, the movie." And Violet's like, "Oh, I can't wait to see that movie," and like literally like the comic that she wants to go see. And like instead in this universe, instead of Planet of the Apes, it's Planet of the Clowns, stuff like that. And like in Zira, she ends up in the 80s, so Violet's on the streets working, and like she's like a background character for like a split second. And then I did a Halloween book. I'm a huge horror movie fan, and I was like, it'd be really cool if like Violet's killing these zombies, and then like these zombies get her, and then all of a sudden like a spear goes through one of the zombies' head, and she turns, and it's the cave woman like from a distance, and like they just nod at each other, and then she just disappears. Like you don't see her the rest of the story. It's like, what?
Nah, it's cool, man. I mean, we all have like we all like building our like how have little connections to all our worlds in some way or another. I did the same thing with my first novel. I connected it to like two projects. One hadn't been released at the two of them that hadn't been released. One has. The other one still is in work and development. But I mean, that's we all like all our stories connect to us on some level. It doesn't matter what the story is. So, we haven't gotten silly yet. Damn, I feel bad about this, but you keep making me think about. You keep making me think about serious questions. So I'm going to ask another one here because you're connecting all your stuff together. You've done 12 of these, which means you're very serious about this, and you definitely have your own little corner of the universe here. But if you were to talk to your audience, and I would really go to you. What are your stories? What are the stories you're actually trying to tell? What part of you are you expressing? Because I truly believe this. Everything we try to say in our stories is on some level or another a reflection of something we're saying. We're trying to say to the world. It's just how I think we're wired as creators. So what's your message to the world?
Well, like for me, I do a lot of fun books, and like a lot of it, most of it's just like for fun. However, my main book, Totally Rad Life of Violet, she's very gung ho about no drugs, taking down drug dealers and all that. And that actually comes from my past experience. I had two girlfriends in the past that were like major hardcore heroin addicts.
Ooh.
And so like a part of them went into my book, into my character. And, but I'm not the type of guy who's going to tell you, don't do drugs, drugs are bad, okay? I'm not that kind of guy. Like, but like, I can do a story saying like, look, Violet doesn't like drugs. She takes down drug dealers. Like, there's people that like drugs. And, one thing with addicts, you can't convince an addict to get off drugs. They have to make that decision themselves to want to kick the habit, like, there's rehab and all that stuff. And I support all that. But like, at the end of the day, it's like, they have to learn how to forgive themselves, even especially like when you go through rehab and you fall back onto the old habits that you used to have. Like, one of the big things you got to learn is like, you just have to learn to like look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I forgive you, and now we're going forward to our next step, our like journey in life kind of thing. And a lot of people don't realize that with that book, because of the fact that it's an adult story, so they think like, oh, like he's just writing pornography. It's like, no, I mean, there's a hidden message there, but I don't really elaborate on it. Like
No.
like that's for the reader to find it, and to interpret in the way that they want to interpret.
It's interesting, and people I know that like do use substances of various kinds. I've seen it. I've seen it in a variety of forms. I'm not crazy about it for a lot of the same reasons you're not crazy about it. I'm never going to tell someone not to do it because this show has taught me one thing very important is that not to judge anybody because I don't have like I literally do not have that luxury. Otherwise, I couldn't have this conversation with you. If I was judgmental, we couldn't do this, and that would suck. And I actually enjoy like getting to meet different people that actually see the world differently, and that's an important thing. But the other part of it too is I realized something too. As I've gotten older and wiser, well, wiser we'll let someone smarter than me judge that one. But I recognize the fact that everybody walks their own path. Everybody, and it doesn't really matter. Like me putting my context. I can look at something you're doing and say, okay, maybe there's a better way of doing this. But I'm getting to the point where I'm like, that live and let live thing, that's a lot harder. Like when you're younger, you think you know what the hell you're talking about. As you get older, you realize you really don't. It was just one of those things where you just recognize the fact that everybody does their own thing, and that's not going to change even if you disagree with that lifestyle thing. So you really got two choices. You can openly oppose it, and unless I'm seeing, and drugs is a really hard one because there is that point of where you can literally see harm being done, and that's a difficult thing to actually look at. But the other side too is if they don't want to change, there's really nothing you can do about it. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just some big. Yeah, man. This has gotten more serious than I thought it would be. Dang.
Hey, it's fun though, right? Like, who
Oh
would have
no,
thought? Like,
totally no. This is why I do this stuff.
yeah,
Uh,
serious.
yeah. No, I mean, it just seems to me. So, okay. I feel you're going to stay in. So you got this giant. So you're going to do this mega crossover in like 5 years with all the characters. Like the five thing of like this great, like cosmic or semi-cosmic or whatever it is threat in your head.
Yeah, like, well, one thing I like to do holiday specials. So like, because Roxy's not a real character technically, like she's not real in the universe. She's just a movie character. So when I did the Star Wars parody, basically Violet's story takes place in 1987, but the story for the Star Wars parody takes place in the early 80s. So that's when she was on drugs. So when Violet's on like on a drug binge, like that's when Roxy shows up, kind of like Kazoo from the Flintstones, where like he would randomly show up, but only Fred Flintstone would see him. Like basically, that's what Roxy is to Violet. Like she's an imaginary character that just shows up in Violet's life, and so like in the Star Wars story, like Roxy Feelgood's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi, and she's like Luke Skywalker. And then I did a Christmas special with my characters where basically this is really like kind of like breaking the fourth wall here, like where so like all my characters, like they're sitting around the Christmas tree. I just did this like last month, and like all my characters are like, well, what do you want for Christmas? And then Violet goes, I want to meet my maker, and then I go, all right, draw me in, and then literally I get drawn into my comic book, my own book, and I'm hanging out with all my characters that I've created. Like it's very like kind of like Garth Ennis type stories. It's like, yeah, I'll draw myself into the book. Like that'll be fun.
Why not? Why not? Why not? So wait, you did Star Wars. You didn't actually do the Star Wars Christmas special, did you?
No. So every May the 4th, it's a 3-year plan, right? So every May the 4th, I do a Star Wars parody story where it features all of the characters that I have. So the last year I did Totally Rad Wars, and as we go along, I get more and more characters. So when I do this year, when I do Neon, which is the name of our 80s slasher, when I do Neon Strikes Back, we're going to have 12 Totally Rad Babes when we originally only had 7. And then next year, when we do Return of the Clown, we're probably going to have even more, because I know we actually just created our 13th Totally Rad Babe over the weekend. So it's like we keep coming up with all these amazing, sexy ladies and like beautiful characters. Like we got 4 sexy lady clowns. We have an 80s flasher. We have 3 topless babes from outer space. We have a all ages science fiction babe. We have an 80s flasher. I mean, and the the cave woman. I mean, it goes on. Like and also like my newest character, I named her Kid Banger. She wears rollerblades, has like cat ears, and like she's the arch nemesis of Violet. So we get to find out like why are they arch mortal enemies type thing. And also, I'm doing a summer camp book this year because, hey, why not? Summer camp's fun and it's the 80s.
Why not? And those are great. That's a great horror trope right there. So, okay. Yeah, I was going to ask if you had literally done the Christmas special, I would have cried, like literally cried, because that's that. Talk about things I wish I'd never seen, right? Because you go in there thinking it's going to be great, and then 30 minutes and you're like, what am I watching? Like, what am I?
You're like, oh, it's Chewbacca and his family. Like, ugh.
It's bad. Like we were talking earlier about bad movies we can't unsee. I mean, I'd rather. I mean, if you're gonna give me a choice between that and Green Lantern, I'll watch Green Lantern, and that will hurt me. That will legitimately hurt me. But I don't know what the hell I'm watching with the Star Wars Holiday Special. I'm watching that. I still don't. I watched it and I don't know. It's like, who approved this? Like, how did this escape the studio? Because it had to have escaped the studio, right?
I mean, like, also, like, you got to think, like, oh, this is, like, right when, like, Star Wars' biggest movie of all time, basically. And they're like, we got to do something. And Lucas is like, well, I can't come out with another movie till then. And they're like, well, let's get it. We got studio time. We got a studio we can rent out. Let's do something. And then George Lucas is like, hold my beer. Actually, no, he's more like, give me that beer. And then
give me all of the beers. All of them. And then afterwards you look at that, you're like, I still don't. All the
It was so, it was so bad. Even like he didn't even bother going back to try to remaster that, adding CGI characters 20 years later.
no, you can't fix that. Like it's unfixable.
It's like maybe if we just with CGI a couple extra Jawas in the scene, it could be
So,
better.
so I'm gonna date myself. So I think the part that like I oddly popped for way back when we were young, we did the White and Nerdy actual music video, was that Star Wars Christmas Carol back alley deal. It's like back when you couldn't get a hold of it. Like this was still like in the tape era. It was like okay, yeah, it exists. No one wants it, but it does exist. There's a reason why it was attempted to be burned. But anyway, that's I think the last bad movie thing here. So you got a busy year in front of you. Looks like it sounds like you got a pretty busy year.
Yeah, like I'm currently we're doing a Kickstarter right now that my vice president Giovanni Barondo is running, which is our greatest hits of 2020. Basically, the books that we didn't kickstart, and then a one shot of Violet, which is our new book, a little short fun story that we did. And then we're gonna do another Kickstarter around March, maybe April, and then the May the 4th, and then so the summer camp book that I'm doing is actually it's a crossover with crossover campaign with Tom Hutchison from Big Dog Inc. So we're doing that in June, and then after that, I'm probably going to be doing a summer book. I haven't decided which character I want to use yet or do. And then October we have our 80s slasher, and then our latest book, Coven Black, which is written by Giovanni, and it's kind of like it's a Latino story meets like Night of the Demons. It's really cool. I'm really excited about it, and there's some really fun characters in there. Our newest sexy clown will appear, and her name is Linda Pistola the Chola clown. Just because, hey, let's make a sexy Chola clown because why not? So like we're having fun. Like there's no limits at Totally Rad Comics. Like usually, like whenever Giovanni's been with me since like basically almost day one. He was like my first fan, and then he became my best friend, and now we're making comics together. And everything he pitches me, I'm like, yeah, man, let's do it. Like I'm a pretty easy sell when it comes to him and his stories. I'm like, yeah, like he's like, yeah, and then there's boobs in this. I'm like, yeah, I'm sold. Boobs, yeah, great.
Okay. I think two more questions. I think we'll wrap this bad boy up. By the way, thank you very much for coming in on this. This was definitely a ton of fun.
Hey, no problem, man.
Is there anything you won't do? I'm gonna ask that question.
Oh, yeah. yeah. There's definitely a lot of things that I won't do that people don't realize. Like I got fans. I got some really interesting fans, really great fans who become friends. And some of these fans, like they'll ask me, they're like, yeah, man, so like, are you ever going to do anything with like basically bathroom stuff and like rape stuff like that? And I'm like, nope, not going to do any of that. Like the tentacle porn stuff, I'm not into that. I'm actually when it comes to adult comic books, I'm pretty clean. Apparently, there's some books that I've read, some adult indie books that I'm like, Jesus, like, because like there was a guy that did a book, and a couple of my fans bought the book, and they hit me up. They're like, "Hey, man, have you checked this guy's book out? Like, he makes your stuff look like child's play." And I was like, "All right, well, let me go read it." And I'm like, "Wow, he really does make my stuff look like, my stuff looks PG. Like, it looks like a Disney book compared to like the stuff that he's putting out."
Well, ultimately, I mean, to be like the art of a good story. Ultimately, is about what you show and what you tell, right? And sometimes showing all it actually doesn't actually. It takes away from it. Actually, it doesn't, right? Sometimes it does, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, ultimately, especially with adult books, there is a fantasy element to it, and if you're not fulfilling that fantasy element, if you're too graphic and real, it's not gonna. I think the appeal just loses it after a while. It's like one of those things, like, that's just me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong to think in those terms, but that's just how I see it. I could. Someone I'm sure will correct me on that one. I'm sure I'm somewhere. That's okay. I'm okay. I know what I like, damn it. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I know what I like, I know what I want to do, and I do it. And then like there'll be some people that are like, yeah, man, like, but only if your character did this. And I'm like, uh, it's not that kind of girl.
No, it's not that kind of girl. And there's this little thing called fan fiction. You do what you want. I'm doing like, yeah.
That'd be pretty. Actually, that'd be pretty cool. Like, people do fan fiction of my characters, like, because
It'll happen.
like with Star Trek, I used to go to a lot of Star Trek conventions where there'd be these people that sell the Star Trek Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock gay fan fiction. I'm like, that's really cool, man. Like, that's pretty funny.
So, are you a Babylon 5 fan by any chance?
I'm not. No, I'm actually I'm a Star Trek fan basically because my dad, when I was a kid, like brainwashed me into thinking Star Trek was the end all be all show, the original and the Next Generation. So like, unfortunately, I know a lot about Star Trek.
Okay. You'll appreciate this. I think this is a good way to wrap up this interview. So, the creator of Babylon 5, the two actors that played Londo and Jakar, right, played a really mean prank on him at a convention. So, he promised vengeance. This is what he did. He did not kill them. See, no. You don't kill somebody in your story. People like that. No, you don't do that. What he did is he came up with an erotic gay porn featuring both of those two characters. And he wrote it as a screenplay, right? He wrote it as a screenplay. And that was his revenge. See, never, ever, ever, and I tell people this all the time, never kill a character on screen that you despise. They like that stuff. That's letting them off the hook. Make them fan fiction. Make them famous forever. Right? Because they'll never live that down. And people will remember that, especially if you're the creator and you approve. It's not just giving you fodder to punish people. Like anyone that crosses you, you make them somebody's fantasy. That will end that will wreck them in ways you'll never ever.
I love it. I love it.
Figured you'd enjoy that. So you got Kickstarter on right now. So why don't we talk about what your next two Kickstarters, I guess, in great detail, and where people can find you, and then we'll just do a quick, fun little wrap up.
Okay, great. Yeah. So right now, our current Kickstarter, the Totally Rad Comics Show Me Your Hits, hits with an H, not with a T. Show Me Your Hits is currently running. We have over 7 different Totally Rad comic books with I think we're almost at about 80 different variant covers. And if you just want to get all the books and all the variants, it's just $1,000 pledge. But if you're like me, you can only afford a $20 cover. Hey, that's cool too, man. Every little bit helps. You want to pledge $1, that $1, that gets us closer to. We're already past our goal. Our goal was 1,000. I think we're currently at $14,098. So we're guaranteed this book's going to get delivered. And this is our 6th crowdfunding campaign. So we're basically, as soon as it ends, I'm actually in a car on my way to Phoenix, Arizona, and the books are a lot of them are already being made. So it's I'm just going to pick them up, drive home, and then ship them all out. And then in March, we'll be bringing our newest character, Kitty Banger, into the Kickstarter fold. It's going to be called Totally Rad Life of Kitty Banger. And you'll realize why she is a enemy of Violet, and also it takes place in the Totally Rad universe. And I figured, well, let's do Totally Rad. There could be more than one Totally Rad. It's not just the Totally Rad Violet all the time. It's another character. And also, that when I do Kickstarters, we like to put more than one book. So there'll be another book, and it's going to be the Roxy Feelgood Money Shots. And it's going to be featuring our sexy clowns, including our latest new sexy clown. And Giovanni Barunda will be writing that. I'm very excited for it. I hope you guys are. And then again, don't forget, May the 4th, Neon Strikes Back, our totally rad Star Wars parody. And also, Valentine's Day is coming up. We're doing Valentine's Day variants. And Toaster Day, we're doing our little one-shot that's going to be on the web store, the Toasty the Killer Toaster. And you can find me on Facebook. I'm Jim E. Noble. I'm pretty easy to talk to. I'm usually always available to chat, whatever you want to chat about. You want to read books, you want to buy some books, I'll hook you up. You mentioned that you saw the show. I'll give you a discount. Also, you can find me on Instagram, Jim.E.Noble. You can find me. Also, Totally Rad Comics has a Facebook page as well. So if you want to see some of the cool covers that we've come out with, Facebook.
Nice. So, well, I'll have you do in this over. You'll just give me the links to all that stuff so I can put it in the episode description. But beyond that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Jim for coming in at the last minute. We definitely had a good time with this. Thanks very much, buddy, for making this a very fiery, fun chat. Definitely should do this again, officially somewhere down the road. Maybe around like when we get ready for May the 4th to be with you, we'll do this again formally.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll do that. We might do that again, ladies and gentlemen. We'll do that. Beyond all that, if you want to support this podcast, click the follow button on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/JustJoshingPodcast. Thanks, Jagtrust, for listening. Thanks. Hold on, I'm gonna make sure I get everybody here. Mandy Eve, thanks, Mandy Eve, for also coming out and listening and commenting. Support me there. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pantelleresco. Support me there. My Patreon page is patreon.com/JustJoshingPodcast. If you want to support the podcast that way, you can do so as well. Stay inspired, keep shining in the darkness, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night with AP Fuchs. And we are